case everything I did.
Welcome.
I'm gonna try that.
It's a
Probably
brown
never been to
spicy,
many chamber meetings.
cheddar and eggs. All spicy sauce.
Part of C.
And those are fresh rolls. Homemade. Everything's
Your
homemade.
intern was such a fine young man.
Everything's
Charles.
Everything's
What's your
homemade.
number?
Yes, sir.
Charles is.
So,
He
yep,
is
so,
a great
there's
guy.
pumpkin, there's
We got
pumpkin,
these
blueberry.
Students that
and
come up there and learn
Those cinnamon rolls I meant to come back.
what real life is, how to do things.
Yep, so.
And they watch it and they learn.
If you want, you can go back.
We've got an incredible
Yeah,
number
or
of
you can do
people.
it all right. Whatever hurts your credit.
Yeah, let me know when where, I'll do my best.
I will.
What? Everything's small.
So we were talking about healthcare, the healthcare bill that our friends, the Democrats, want to offer, and it outlaws any private insurance plan that would compete against the government.
I think that was fine.
It outlaws any opportunity for private insurance, which means that we gotta take them at their word, Medicare for all, which means that if you work for Southwest Airlines, you work for American Airlines, you work for AT&T,
And they're.
that is a private insurance plan. It will be outlawed and everyone will move to a government-controlled system. Now, the problem I've got with it, and while we in this room have a little bit of long tooth and gray hair, it would move families, women and children into a geriatric, so to speak, senior health care plan. What business does the government have of taking over our health care plan and not even allowing competition? This is where we have gone to where the difference between the Republican and Democratic Party are controlled by the government. The goods and services are going to be controlled by the government, top to bottom. Not just healthcare, but dentistry, and even go to an optometrist. You will have to go to a government-controlled doctor. My son's getting ready to graduate from medical school. That means they will socialize the doctors too. They will make it criminally against the law, as they have in Medicare, for them to offer any other plan except, and within that system, the way the government intended it to be done. So this is a loss of freedom, and this is maybe what California is looking at as their option, as they've been overrun with unemployment and people who are homeless. They are now looking, because their socialism, their activism, their progressive environment has taken them to where they have 125,000 homeless people in California. Homeless people, 55,000 homeless people in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is now overrun by MS-13 gangs. And you can look at what's called Netflix, National Geographic's MS-13 gangs. And because of the liberalism in their policies of sanctuary cities, their police officers have lost the advantage or any even level playing field against these cartels, drug cartels, and people who come to this country who are criminals, because they can arrest them but can't hold them.
You know, I watched your opponent say the other night on TV that we don't need a wall. Now here's a guy that grew up in El Paso, 500,000 people, the safest city in Texas. They average 23 murders a year. That is minuscule. You know why? Because they got a wall. You can't zip across the river in El Paso and get lost in the city and get into the interior of the United States. My daughter lives out there, lived out there for 10
Beautiful
years.
city.
It is a safe city. I mean, it's unbelievable. 23 murders a year and 500,000 people. That's nothing. And most of the murders are bar fights or domestic issues.
Yeah.
It's not what we have inside of Dallas where you got, you know, guns, drugs, young black men. That's 99% of the murders in Dallas County. Don't happen in El Paso.
It is a difference of also our sovereignty for our country. If we cannot stop roving gangs, people that gather together just to come and invade the United States, that we're in trouble. The United States, our country, is very benevolent. We allow 1 million people to come legally to our country a year. That is, over the last 20 years, the equivalent of 20 Dallas, Texas, that now are in our country. Think about that. Dallas, Texas is about the 10th largest city in the country. And we've allowed 20 of these from people who, many of whom, 10 years later, are still on welfare. Morning, how are you, Mayor? Where do you want to sit? Well, you ought to get your coffee and
I'm gonna get some
stuff.
coffee and
Right.
food and not interrupt you, but.
But this has a
I
direct
interrupted.
impact on the sovereignty of our country and our ability to pay for our schools, and to pay for our hospitals, and to pay for things. And the Democratic Party is all for being overrun by not just illegals, but without any background check. They're for no background check at all of any criminal status or any history, and want to bring them in for full benefits of citizenship overnight. The last bill that was in Congress that addressed this guaranteed that within 24 hours after you applying for citizenship, you would be given citizenship, which means no background check. And that's where the Democratic Party is today. They are desperate for illegals to come to this country. And then you understand why, because they're going broke in California. They cannot sustain what they've got, so now they want to take Texas next.
Why do they think like that? What makes them tick? Don't they know it's gonna affect them, the Democrats too?
Well, therefore, power to decide our lives. That's what the AFL-CIO is. That's what the Democratic Party is. That's what these left-leaning organizations are all about, making decisions for us rather than us being able to allow ourselves to. And I would have thought that when we were dealing with the old AFL-CIO that I know, they are men and women that get up and go to work every single day. They do the hard work and the labor of this country, and they do. They're mechanics, they're air traffic controllers, they are police officers, they are men and women that put themselves and their lives on the line every day. And so it's just the union bosses that want to control the country. The AFL-CIO has deep roots in socialism, as they always have.
Do you know how many illegals are in this country? They keep kicking around 11 to 13 million. Did you read the study by MIT Yale that said on the low side it's about 22 and maybe as many as 30 million?
I believe it. Once again, we've had 20 years worth of $1 million a year, and those are the ones that came illegally.
Well, that's 10% of the people in this country. If they were suddenly legal tomorrow, that is a huge demographic switch. Huge.
What the Dems are catering to, for the vote.
You know, you
If they
see
cater
what,
to them, they'll get out there and they'll vote for them.
That's right.
Yeah.
you know, you see what's going on in California where they're just spending money on one thing after another toward all of this stuff. And here I am, I live in Dallas, or right here in Rowlett, and I pay non-resident California state income tax on monies that we earn in California. And yet, as little as it is, all of it we should get back every year as a refund. I mean, that's what the income tax form shows. And, but they owe me for like 4 or 5 years of tax return refunds because they don't have any money out there. They're broke. And you know, this is the thing that in your personal finances, you know, if you spend more than you make, you're gonna go broke and you're gonna have struggles. And I just feel like that nobody seems to really have a good handle, except you and some of these other people up there that are working on this thing, because you and I talk about this a lot, but they don't have any idea how much $32 trillion is to pay for something like that. That's a lot of money.
They act like somebody is gonna pay it too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There is a limit to everybody's ability.
I got one right here.
And once again, this is to make everybody look like California, rather than them being in trouble. We'll all be in trouble. And I have openly said, because I believe this is true, Dallas benefited most from the economic gain that we've just had. That means all of us here. I mean, everybody has benefited. Where are we gonna go next? Where are we gonna go next when they do to us what they have done to these other places? Whether it's sanctuary cities, whether it's high taxes, whether it's nationalized health care. And this is where the overlay is very important. The battle is right here in this congressional district. They have chosen to make this the battle. I'd like to say I earned it, but the bottom line is these unions and the AFL-CIO and the Democratic Party hate freedom. They hate you making your own choices, having your own decisions. What they really hate is the cost of living that we have here, the great schools that we have here, the ability that we have to make our own decisions.
No state tax here, nothing like that.
They do not like that.
I mean, it's gone national, you know, with the cruise and Beto, war.
Same thing, all over the country. That is the battle. What's interesting about all that analysis is that Mr. O'Rourke is willing to stand up and say, that's right, I am for impeaching the president, will lead the cause. He is for socialized health care. He will lead the cause. He is for doing away with the tax plan that we passed that has given us the greatest economy in the history of our country. And they are open about that. And the reason why is because they believe they have the advantage of giving back to people things for free against people who work. One of the biggest battles we've got in Washington right now that is unresolved is directly related to what's called SNAP. And SNAP is food stamps, supplemental nutrition. And what all Republicans want is if you are an able-bodied man, that you have to either work or volunteer for 20 hours a week. That's it. Work or volunteer. You do it at schools, you do it at the side, bus stop, but a requirement that able-bodied men have a work requirement. Barack Obama and every Democrat is on the other side. And they make it into something that it's not. And that is, well, people are still entitled to eat. Well, let me tell you what. Enough people in here remember their 6th grade lesson of 1607, Jamestown. A lot of people came over. They might have been sick, but if you were able-bodied, if you don't work, there wasn't food for you at the table. It should be designed that this is for women and children and seniors and disabled people. And if you are able-bodied and you actually need temporary help, I have no problem. But as a lifestyle, to live your life off mooching off of people or standing out the side out in the corner and begging for food, rather than at the time there are millions of jobs, that's where I draw the line. And our party is. My party is drawing the line. And the other side is stuck in. They are not going to get it. So these are the kinds of also basic elements of difference. Debbie, you were not here when I spoke about HR 676 which is a single payer system for healthcare. They refer to it to fool people as Medicare for all. Medicare is a senior healthcare plan that they want women and children and families on. And it's a geriatric-based medicine model, not a family young people model. And of course, if they were to win, they will then say, well, it's gonna take us 5 years to make that change. And they'll do, just like they did in Obamacare, spend hundreds of millions of dollars to waste our money, giving it away to systems, making promises that it can't keep. Rather than the Republican Party, my party, is interested in bringing people up, not down. And that's what our tax credit was that we passed in the House. It was a tax credit that would allow every single American to either have a pre-tax contribution from an employer or a tax credit. What would that tax credit be? For a family of four, $9,000. And the reason why we can do this is because we're paying it the most expensive healthcare place, and that's an emergency room. And you can see it in your tax bill in the county, Parkland Hospital. So once you go and look at the massive, massive amount of money that's been spent, and something called DISH, which is disproportionate share, that goes to hospitals where there are poor people, you will recognize there's more than enough money in the system to allow everybody to have the same type of group insurance that is what any large company gets, or what most large companies get. And that is the Republican model, and it is like life to a vampire. The Democratic Party recognizes that is equivalent. Instead of what might be them taking over, making every decision and outlawing, unlawfully, they are outlawing any other private carrier. We give people that same opportunity. I call it equity. And equity is important in our relationship with people. Not the same, equity. Not where you have to do something special, but where you're given that same right and responsibility. If you choose to, you choose it, you choose not to. The differences between our parties are dramatic. Mayor, how you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Sorry I was a little bit late.
Yeah, you're not late at all. You're right on time.
Would you care to comment, and if you talked about this before I got here, I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
The mass migration coming up from South America and what's really going on?
Well, what's going on is that they're taking advantage of not a loophole, but the law. The law was intended to allow any single person that would come OTM other than Mexico, and allow them through all of South America and really anywhere in the world to come to our shores and to claim that they were asylum, and to claim that they were in threat of their life somewhere else. And I have not studied this, but evidently, in fact, throughout international law, if you can go to a neighboring country, which is what happens in many places across Africa, once they take somebody to a safer government, there is no claim. That's why they have refugees and why this international aid pours in to a country that's next door to where it's not asylum, just like it is over in Syria. Those people want to come back. They're not trying to claim they want to stay there, they're waiting to come back. And excuse me, I'm getting ready to sneeze here, sorry about this. Yeah.
Happens to the best of us.
Excuse me, bless you.
Good luck.